When the wife of this 62-year-old man walked into her garden on this sunny morning, she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. Beneath their grass pasture, she discovered a buried car, and when she and her husband dug it up, all hell broke loose, resulting in her husband leaving the very next day. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Emily, the woman who discovered the car first, walked around her garden completely oblivious that morning. She held a small hand-sized spade for planting newly sprung seeds, and next to her feet was a large watering can. But after watering her first bed of flowers, she spotted something sticking out of the ground. There was a metal-like object sticking out of the soil. It wasn't much, but its material harshly contrasted with the loose and organic earth it was in. "My watering must have moved the ground a bit, uncovering this thing," Emily said to herself. She used her spade to dig around the pointy metal thing, but it didn't take long before a major fright fell upon Emily. The more she dug, the more the hairs on her neck stood up. This object was much larger than she initially thought. Emily yelled for her husband to come over and take a look, and his expression was just as shocked as hers. Nathan, Emily's husband, grabbed a shovel from the shed and joined his wife in the excavation. For over 2 hours, they dug around the foreign object, and by the end of it, Emily's rose garden was completely gone. But it resulted in a clear picture of what was beneath the soil. It was an old, rusty car. Nathan stated that the car was a model that had to be made in the 60s as he crouched next to it. The old man inspected every inch of the car and frowned his brows the entire time while doing it. Emily asked if she could join him in the inspection, but Nathan reacted unexpectedly. The jumpy Nathan waved his arms around wildly, making push motions toward his wife, indicating that she had to stay back. "I'm sorry, honey, but I don't think it is safe for you to come any closer to this thing." That remark surprised Emily, and her husband's sudden nervousness added additional weirdness. However, Emily knew her husband was technical, so she figured he probably knew what he was talking about. She obliged and observed the car from a distance. After Nathan finished up his search, he guided her wife back inside. "I have to make a quick call." Emily guessed it must be with an expert, but the sounds that came from the other room indicated otherwise. Emily waited in the living room while her husband used his phone in their kitchen. Emily didn't know who was on the other end of the line, but she heard Nathan speaking frantically, and she could hear his erratic footsteps pacing around. The confused woman placed her ear against the closed kitchen door to get a better idea of what was going on behind it. Who the hell is he talking to? This wasn't just any random expert, because the volume and ferocity in Nathan's voice weren't how you converse with a stranger. When the kitchen door finally flew open again, Emily was ready to confront her husband. She felt like he acted strange ever since he first saw the car, and since then, you've got increasingly more nervous and weird. She wanted to know what was going on. "Who did you call?" But Nathan fell silent. His silent treatment angered his wife, and Emily asked Nathan who he called and what he found in the buried car wreck. But then her husband responded very out of character. He got angry and irritated and said it was none of her business. He also forbade Emily from entering that part of the garden. Emily's head was filled with questions, but every time she asked one, Nathan shut it down instantly. For the sake of not falling into an endless argument, the anxious Emily decided to let it rest for now, and at the end of the day, so did she. The two of them started in bed together. Nathan turned his body so his face pointed toward the wall, indicating that conversation was out of the question. Emily just stared at the ceiling, trying to calm her restless mind. After hours of headaches, she finally found some sleep. But when she woke up the next morning, Nathan's side of the bed was empty. Where has he gone off to now? This entire ordeal was getting too bizarre, and Emily could feel her heart rate rising instantly. "I'm getting too old for this," the worried woman said while putting on her bathrobe. She took her first steps down the stairs and heard sounds coming from the driveway. It wasn't talking she heard, just busy footsteps fumbling with objects. When Emily got to the front door, she saw moving going around in front of their house. It was Nathan, and he seemed anxious. The old man was hastily loading things into their car. Emily opened the door to talk to her husband, but the moment Nathan saw his wife's face sticking out of the open doorway, he bolted. The old man got into his car quickly and started the engine without saying a word. Emily ran toward the vehicle, but she was already too late. With screeching tires and high speed, Nathan hasted away in their car. Emily screamed from the top of her lungs, hoping her husband would still catch her words. "What the hell, man? Where are you going?" But Nathan didn't turn the car around. He just kept driving. In a desperate attempt to reach her husband, she tried to call him, but again, there was no response. This situation was getting too weird for the poor old woman, and Emily felt tears fill her eyes. And that feeling of desperation led her to ignore her husband's wishes, something she hardly ever did. She walked into the garden and visited the wreckage site, a place that Nathan forbade her from going to. Emily circled the rusty old car, hoping to find answers. She wasn't allowed to come this close before Nathan argued that the area wasn't safe. However, with everything that happened over the last 24 hours, Emily questioned if that remark was even true. The old woman couldn't find anything at first, but when she crouched in the hole they dug and looked closer, she noticed something was off. There was a narrow but deep hole underneath the steering wheel. It wasn't in the car but the ground it lay in, like someone dug a small shaft straight down in the ground. And it wasn't there yesterday. Did Nathan do this? Did Nathan dig up something without her knowing it? And was that why he left? Emily's head almost exploded because of all these questions. After the strange discovery, she walked back into the house defeated. She did not know what to do. But then she saw a letter on the table. She walked closer and saw that it was addressed to her. Once Emily opened it, she recognized her husband's handwriting instantly. He always wrote in a scribbly, narrow pattern, almost like a doctor would. Nathan apologized in the letter for leaving so suddenly, but he stated that he wasn't coming back. Emily broke down in tears while reading the handwritten note. It continued, stating that it was not that he wanted to leave. He loved Emily with all his heart, but apparently he had to leave, and Nathan couldn't tell his wife why. The only thing the letter said was that it was for her safety. The confusion became too much as Emily dropped down in her reading chair. Her hands covered her face, and her elbows were pushed down into the tops of her upper legs so firmly that it hurt. "What must I do? You cannot leave me like this with all these questions. Nathan, please!" Emily couldn't simply accept her husband leaving her and saying goodbye in a letter. There was more behind this, starting with the genuine nerves and fear she witnessed in Nathan's eyes over the last day. This deserved some looking into, and Emily did just that, starting with a phone call. Immediately after putting down the letter, Emily remembered Nathan's phone call from the previous day. It was frantic and panicky, and it was also a huge mistake because Nathan had forgotten one important thing. Her husband was horrible with technology and used the landline to make the call. But that device had caller ID. Emily simply had to check the machine for the last outgoing call, and she would have a number to call back. But it didn't even get to that point, because the number he called was a person she knew. It was Luke, Nathan's dear friend and colleague at the garage he used to work at. Her husband used to be a mechanic, and his specialty was restoring old cars. That's why she quickly believed every word he spoke when he told her to be careful. Luke was his co-worker and partner in crime, and they used to do everything together. So the call to his skilled friend wasn't that suspicious, but the call came as a bonus. It was added to all the weird stuff that had already happened, and that fact made it all too coincidental. Emily had the feeling that this man knew more about her husband's disappearance, so she borrowed her neighbor's car and drove to his address. Once Emily arrived, she was ready to confront him. Every time she questioned her husband, he shut down. She hoped this would be different. She rang the bell, and Luke opened the door. The old man was clearly surprised, and before he could invite her in, she had already walked past him into the hallway. She confronted him immediately about the phone call her husband had made. Emily pretended she knew more than she did, hoping to pressure him into talking. Luke stayed silent until Emily began throwing things around his house. The dramatic display worked. Luke finally admitted Nathan had called him, panicked about the car. "Nathan begged me to stay quiet." "About where the car came from," Luke said. Emily was confused. Luke explained that the car scared Nathan, and if she knew the full truth, she could be seen as an accomplice. Emily demanded clarity, but Luke insisted this was something for the police. "When they arrive, I'll explain everything." Without hesitation, Emily called the authorities. When the police arrived, Luke shared everything. He said he was the only one Nathan trusted with this story, mainly because of his remote cabin. Then he told a tale that dated back 40 years before Nathan and Emily even met. It was about a bank heist, specifically the one on Langro Street. The robbery was successful until the getaway car was spotted by police. The robbers needed to dispose of it and drove to Nathan's garage, where he was working late. They threatened his life and forced him to hide the vehicle and the gun used in the crime. Terrified, Nathan buried both in his backyard. That's where they stayed for 4 decades until Emily unearthed them while gardening. The revelation stunned everyone. Emily was devastated by the burden Nathan had carried. The police were equally surprised the secret had stayed hidden for so long. Luke explained that Nathan had likely run off to the cabin he once mentioned, a secluded wooden home deep in the woods. The officers, guided by Luke, headed straight there. Inside the cabin, they found Nathan sitting in a corner, trembling but unharmed. When he saw Emily, he stood and embraced her. "I told you to let it go. Now you're in danger too," he said. But the police assured them they were safe. Emily's heart ached to see him this way. She reassured him and urged him to work with the police. Eventually, Nathan agreed. He handed over everything he had hidden, including the gun. He said he kept it only to ensure Emily wouldn't be blamed if it were discovered in their garden. That weapon turned out to be the key. It still had the fingerprints of the robbers. Within days, the police arrested the now elderly criminals. After a swift hearing, they were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives behind bars. That brought long-awaited peace to Nathan. And to Emily, it felt like she got her husband back. "It's like a weight has been lifted off his shoulders," she said, smiling.